The cadenza is total genius. It starts with, you remember at the very beginning of the piece that we had 1, 4, 5, and 4 was this. So the cadenza starts with that chord. This should be played with a combination of holding the pedal, but also a very legato touch to make the whole thing feel connected from here to there. We have a very beautiful resolution here. Make sure that the B that you play twice is firstly a melodic one, and then here is an accompaniment sound, and then it's all atmosphere. Start as slowly as you like. Take as long as you want, and play as many of these as you want. This is one of those runs that if you'd prefer to find some way of dividing it, that's completely up to you. I happen to learn it without doing that. There we are again with the 4 chord. A little bit of chromatic noodling. Here's a change that Grieg wanted, that note. And this is all about voicing, that we make sure we have this line. This is the kind of legato where you really are transferring the weight from note to note, almost overlapping, and this has to be very underneath the G sharp. At this point, I happen to like to take this note over with the left hand so that I have total control over how soft that final A is going to be. So that's the introduction to the cadenza, the beginning of it. And now here's where we get the tune. Basically, the outline of what you're doing is this. This very obviously comes from this. You want it to be slower, you want it to be atmospheric, and you want to play, of course, all the notes that Grieg gave you, which are these. There's a kind of ideal, which is that this is constant while you're doing this. And I honestly don't think it's very important. I think it's important that it's there whenever you can. There's enough sound from here that if this briefly drops out while you're distracted playing the octaves, it's fine as long as you are hearing the color that you want to hear. The pedaling only works if the bass note is strong enough to carry you through each half measure. And it's very important for the first few measures of this that you avoid the temptation to get too worked up. Now, once you get to that point of hitting the C sharp, and you've introduced the A7 chord, the music just naturally starts to open up. Let that happen. And at this point, it's clearly built up to a big moment. Your left hand stops playing, which is great because you can put all your focus into these chords. And then both hands are playing chords. This is not a particularly difficult octave passage if you think of it in terms of these 4 notes and these 4 notes. The only thing is you have to remember when that pattern stops, and it goes chromatic. If you hold down the pedal for certain parts of that passage, you're going to get a tremendous amount of sound generated, and you definitely want that. And it's fine if there's blur at that point. I'm putting the pedal down, and I'm only doing a half change on the 4th beat. And even when I get to that A, I only do a half change, because I actually want a little bit of that thunder to still be in that note. We should perceive it as an A, but it doesn't need to be that clean. So here we are with an exploded version of this theme. An absolutely massive statement, which of course can be slower as well as bigger and louder. And then we have this, which basically provides this extra rumble. So there's a real sense of thunderstorm kind of writing in the music. And we get this, and it continues. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Grieg wrote all of this as arpeggios where the right hand and left hand alternate playing 4 notes each, like this. 4 notes, 4 notes, 4 notes, 4 notes, and 4 notes. And Percy Grainger made a suggestion, which was that it would be a lot more powerful if there was a kind of a martellato effect with the hands to do it like this, with whatever finger you like. And it is, in fact, a lot louder. And it's very effective. But I feel like if you do that for every one of those chords, you end up with, maybe it's all a little bombastic and we're not quite hearing, because that is the music that we want to hear in this passage. So I came up with my own compromise and my own combination of these 2 ideas. So I play the first 2 chords the way Grieg wrote them, with the 4-note groups. That one and this one. And then on this one, which is twice as long, I do the Percy Grainger arrangement. And I'm basically doing 5-2 in the right hand and 1-2 in the left hand. And it's fabulous. It's really, really, really strong. So I have a combination of, and then, and notice how for that last one, I'm dropping the sound a lot so there's room to make a crescendo. Here. Like this. So that's the way that I would approach this. And then the same for the next one. Do those like this. And then do this one. And then I think all of these can be done in the Grainger arrangement. Now here, the indication that Grieg made, and also appears in this Schirmer edition, is to catch that G sharp silently. So you've played this very broad triplets. Catch it silently, let go of the pedal, So we can still hear it connect to this. Same thing. And again. So that way we really hear that very clearly connecting all the way through. And again, the pedal's down, capture it silently, and let go of the pedal, and you should still be able to hear it, especially if I'm not talking and waiting to do it. Now here's that great harmony. It's that harmony combined again with this pedal note, and that becomes this very beautiful harmony, which this is the one moment that I think Grieg was even anticipating Impressionist writing when you hear this. And I try to do that. I try to let it almost like the kind of thing you would hear in Jadot of Ravel, try to have a flourish to the high note, like this, and then just very soft on the way down, and then you emerge from that with the trills. Now we have this last gasp of the theme, but because your right hand is busy with a trill, there's one awkward chord in there, which is this one. That's awkward to play for almost everybody, and of course if your hand doesn't stretch that far, it's impossible to play. You can take that D with the right hand. And that's no problem at all. Do this for strength. Be as dramatic as you want here. Hold it as long as you need to. And here you want to get to the point. You want to start this so that you can hear them individually. You want to speed it up to the point that it becomes just a color. And anything that works is fair game. I find that I hold this hand fairly with a little bit of tension, and I find I don't need as much down here. I keep this arm low, this arm high, so that I can kind of mentally picture my arms going at it and not really think about the fingers at all. And then your right hand thumb moves down one note. And the whole time this is happening, you are not beholden to anything to do with your accompanist or with the conductor. All of this that happens in the cadenza is your freedom to be expressive in any way that feels appropriate to you. At this final moment, you then finally need to be clear. And when you land there, the orchestra's coming in, and they're making a very last atmospheric statement of this. And then you come in changing everything, because the orchestra then moves to a poco più allegro, and you feel a little bit of the energy that we had in the beginning. And he ends the first movement in a very similar way to how he started it, with this same alternating of tonic and dominant. So it's basically, it's just 1-5, 1-5, 1-5, 1-5, 1. That's all it is for the entire end of the movement. And this is exactly like the opening, except it's written without so many pauses throughout. And yes, of course you're going to play that penultimate note with a low octave. Gives a little bit more sonority, and it makes for a very satisfying conclusion to this brilliant first movement. Hello, I'm Jon Kimura Parker, and I'm here with you on Tonebase to talk about the Grieg Piano Concerto. And when I say the Grieg Piano Concerto,